Welcome to the Smart Connector podcast. My name's Jane Bayler, and I have such a wonderful guest for you today. It's Sherry Shannon-Vanstone. Welcome, Sherry.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here, Jane.
Great to have you here. So, Sherry is a serial tech entrepreneur with several exits under her belt in both the US and Canada. And she's also an advocate for female entrepreneurship and women in tech. So she's based west of Toronto, that's in Canada, as I'm sure most of you will know. And she's got a platform that matches industry partners with funders. So we're going to be talking about that as well later. And one of the things that we're really going to focus on and dive deep in this podcast is how companies can start exploring the field of AI and how businesses can use AI to build their success. So I can't wait to get into this because AI is such an important and big topic. So it is really fantastic that I have the opportunity to share your wisdom and expertise with my audience, Sherry. So we'll get straight into it, shall we?
Yes.
Okay. But before we do, just like to learn a little bit about you. So tell us how you came to be an expert in this amazing area.
I have been in technology. I was a mathematician with the U.S. government and then became an entrepreneur. And so I had an opportunity to work with a startup in Silicon Valley many years ago now, and had a successful launch with them in my entrepreneur journey. And being a mathematician, I became an expert in cryptography, which is the encryption and decryption and making codes and breaking codes. And so when I left the government to go to the Silicon Valley company, it was in information security. So we were doing information security for some of the largest multinational companies in the world. And that led me to Canada, and we did all the security for the BlackBerry. And then we did the security for driverless cars and connected vehicles. And then my last company I sold in 2017 to Robert Bosch, a private German company. And I had a 5-year non-compete. So I'm thinking, what am I going to do now? And so I started exploring data analytics and AI. And that was in 2018.
So 2018, that's really before a lot of people were talking about AI all the time as they are now, right? So you got a head start, didn't you, Sherry?
Yes, I did. And it was quite interesting because so much has happened in the last 16 months, as we know, in AI, that it is interesting to see this perspective that I've seen. And not just since 2018, I was also with MasterCard International, where we use neural networks and many years ago and still do. So AI is not new and machine learning is not new. It's just that's what's happened in the last 16 months, but even in the last 10 to years or so, is the compute power and the algorithms have gotten so much better, have improved so much in efficiencies. But yes, the last 16 months have just been quite exciting, not only for the world, but for my company in particular and what we do.
Yes. Well, let's talk about that, Sherry. So what actually is it that you are doing from day to day then in your business right now?
Yeah, so the company is named Profound Impact, and we have a product called Research Impact. And we use machine learning and AI to try to find the perfect match between research funding opportunities, which is over $300 billion worth annually every year, with the hundreds of thousands of corporate partners or corporate entities that want to do research, and then the academic researchers, which is about 25 million. So taking this and trying to get the best match, especially at the tri-match, meaning matching funding with an industry partner, then with the academic research, is an interesting and exciting challenge. And it's humans don't do it as well as the algorithms and AI and machine learning do.
Yeah, so that's obviously something that we're going to talk about. So really, where is the value and how can businesses tap into the power of AI, themselves more successful to run better businesses, really? And how can AI help their people and their processes and their customers and all of these things? So it's obviously a big area, but out of those, Sherry, what topic would you pick in terms of the biggest impact that AI is currently able to make for businesses right now?
I think there's many efficiencies.
Mm.
Looking at your internal work processes
Mm-hmm.
and say, what is taking up unnecessary amount of time and is quite time consuming and doesn't need that human intervention or human involvement on a
Yeah.
minute by minute and seconds by second. And many people will be surprised, especially if you're using third-party software or third-party vendors, that AI is already you're already using AI and you don't even know it. And so that's why I think it's best for companies to understand that. Talk to your vendors, talk to your third-party suppliers, and say to them, how are you using AI? So you will know yourself how it's being used and how you might be able to use it more to be more efficient. For example, in what we do, we digest and ingest 50-page funding applications or nominations, or and so that's easier for a machine to do and an algorithm to do than it is for a human being.
Mm.
It's very time consuming for a human being. And at the end of it, you may say, oh, I'm not even eligible for this. So this funding opportunity. So what we do is do something that it takes human beings a long time to do, and human beings are not as efficient and accurate as machines are. So in everyone's process out there, your listeners and the companies they represent, they should look at their work process and their workflow. And in every area from sales to marketing to manufacturing, how could they utilize AI?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. And what about its impact in terms of marketing and customer engagement and brand and all of that kind of thing? What do you think's the contribution and the impact of AI in those areas right now, Sherry? Because it's a big topic as well.
That's a big topic, and there are companies, as I said, if you're using social media, you're already using AI, and if you're connected to LinkedIn in any way, you probably are. Most listeners are, and they would be using some type of AI to match you with people that you might want to get to know or might want to connect. And that's the only social media that I personally use. My company uses all of them, but I find myself, it's interesting when they suggest something for you, or your Spotify or your iTunes, what you're listening to, Netflix, what you're watching, what they think you might want to watch because of what you've been watching. A lot of that is based on AI. And so it's going to get more targeted as we advance even further. So your personal needs and likes are going to be very, the marketing to you personally is going to be very targeted. And you're going to even have to be, if you really want to fool the algorithms, go and do something crazy and watch something that you never want to see again or whatever, because it's going to go, oh, and of course, because they're looking for patterns and it's looking for these things. But as I said, it's going to get more targeted for you. Now, if in your company, like my company, we want to target specific individuals at academic researchers and also industry partners who want to find non-dilutive funding for their research activities. So that helps us, that we can say we want to be very specific and very targeted. So AI helps us to figure out what are the best avenues, what are the best vehicles to utilize, how are we going to reach these people in the most efficient and cost-effective way.
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic. And as you were talking, I was thinking, I'm getting all these invitations at the moment to contribute to the AI generated articles on LinkedIn in partnerships. And I didn't actually sign up for that particular area of specialty, but the articles that they're sending me, I'm thinking, I really love this topic. And this is very me. And sometimes you think, they've almost seen something. This AI has almost seen something in me that I would not necessarily even have spotted myself. And that really is the power of it, isn't it? Because as you said, it's totally driven by logic and patterns. And sometimes we humans are, well, I suppose there's human error, isn't there? And there's confirmation bias, and there's all of these limitations that we have that computers don't have, really. Isn't that right?
Yes. And if you look at it that way, it's a very positive way to look at it, is
Mm.
that the machine is almost kind of, well, the algorithms, I wouldn't call them machine, the algorithms themselves are, as I said, learning a lot about you, maybe even the potential that you have. I have to tell you this, because it's really funny in a way.
Yeah.
A year and a half ago, when I first was introduced to ChatGPT,
Yeah.
I inquired, I said, write 2 paragraphs on Dr. Scott Vanstone, who is my late husband, and he had 450 patents. He was professor for 35 years. He started companies. He well published and well documented his career. So it wrote a pretty accurate description for him. So I said, write 2 paragraphs on me, Sherry Shannon-Vanstone. And it came up and it hallucinated. But what it did was, it based on my experience, it might have even, I mean, I'm thinking back, I go, well, maybe I could have done that, but I didn't do it. So it was like, wow. Anyway, it was pretty impressive, but I didn't do half of the things it said I did. But maybe it realized my potential that I should have been able to do that. Anyway, that's leading on your comment. So
That is so funny that it's kind of taking the job on of amplifying us to a whole new level, maybe.
yes,
That's right.
yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. Because of course a lot of people get nervous about the power of AI. And of course, Elon Musk famously issued a warning that it actually has some sinister potential if it is not controlled as well. So what do you think about that, Sherry?
I think it's accurate, because many of the large language models are fed by the internet, everything that's out there. And they're sinister and evil people, and they're people who that hate and have biases, and they want to project those onto others. So
Yeah.
when you're looking at the training data, or the data sets are called, that these large language models have been trained on, yes. So you have to have human intervention in these, and they call it fine tuning. So a large language model is developed, and then there's human beings in the process to say, is this a proper answer, or an answer that ethically or should be out there? So some large language, they won't answer every question. ChatGPT won't answer every question that you put to it, because there have been this intervention of human beings. But there are large language models being developed every day, and the data sets they're built on, we don't know what they are. So that's a thing. First of all, if you are going to use AI in your business, and it's not whoever's offering it, ask about the data set, ask how it was trained. And if they say it was trained on everything on the internet, and you go, okay, then if there's been some human beings in the process that try, and it's continuous. This is not just one and done. So it's like saying, okay, there is what we deem as socially acceptable answers or even questions, and some large language models, as I said, may be trained on different data and not have that as much human intervention. Some people will call that censoring, because it is a process of saying we won't allow any of this type of behavior.
Yeah, but then again, obviously free speech is a good thing, but we also do have to recognize the power of the internet to spread whatever, false information, hate, or all of those bad things that are antisocial. And nobody really wants that, except for a minority of people who are not the kind of people that most of us would want to associate with. So I understand why it's important to set some human parameters there, because
Yeah.
a machine is not going to have that, not going to have a conscience.
Yeah. So it's trying to build in those guardrails. I've heard that term recently used with
Guardrails.
the guardrails. And that's really guardrails. And if you're conservative or you're liberal, your guardrails may be different, but the industry is trying to figure out they even have a new term for it. It's called AI safety.
Oh.
And there's institutes in the UK, there's one being set up in Canada, in the US, for national guardrails to be established, but also the international collaboration for the guardrails. This will continue, and this is not new. We did it with the internet. This has been around. The thing, though, is that this is very powerful technology, and there's open source AI. People can change the algorithms because they're open source, and the data sets can be changed. So it's really trying to not necessarily become an expert, just understand what questions you ask. And people ask me, who should we go to for this? And there are consulting firms that are specializing in this today. And I'm sure there's even smaller firms that I'm not aware of that will help companies come up with a list of questions for your industry. It may be something your board instigates or initiates that says, these are the questions we would like to see if you have a board with the governance. So it is powerful. We should be cautious about it. We should try to learn as much as we can. But I'm very optimistic that we as a society can come up with some good guardrails, but they will continuously change. Just like, we have seatbelts and things that are mandatory today. I have friends that hate those and they still try to avoid utilizing those. But it's mandatory because of what it's doing for society as a whole.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And as you were speaking, I was also thinking about those early days of social media and how unprotected a lot of children were, and how much better it is really these days, and how much it's not just to do with awareness, but it's actually the social media platforms have become much more sophisticated in terms of protecting people, really, particularly vulnerable people like our children. And I'm sure that the same thing is going to happen with AI. It's a continual evolution, really, isn't it?
Yes. And I think that each of us have a part to play in that, and we have a voice. AI needs us. And there's a British lady just published a book called AI Needs You. I went to her talk last night in Toronto, and it is quite interesting because it's just she looked back to three 20th century innovations, and one was I'm now forgetting, but one was the internet, and one was in vitro. And I forget the other one now, but it would have come to me. But it was how that when they were introduced, some people were afraid and scared of them and said, wait a minute. And then society itself, I'm talking collectively, we helped put some guardrails on these things. And now look at what in vitro has done, and the wonderful opportunities and that it provides to couples. And so those things are very important for us as individuals to have a voice. And I applaud the people who push back on the social media platforms to say this is not acceptable behavior and we need to do something about it. We will need to do the same thing with AI and the companies that we deal with. Remember, AI is being promoted and developed by corporations, small and large, and what's the motivation of those corporations? And so we should always be asking ourselves, what is my part in this? I need to have a voice and a say.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that is a very socially inclusive message, because I think a lot of people get rather scared and intimidated by the thought of AI, and maybe if they feel on the back foot and they don't really understand it, they just think, well, there's this big brotherish thing that's happening out there and it's nothing to do with me. And I think the message that you are sending here is that it is to do with you. There's nothing to be scared of, really. we all have an opportunity to play a part in this continual evolution, really.
Yes, I love that because I think it's sometimes easier to be scared. We want to be scared of things. I don't know. Something in human beings. We love scary movies. We love scary topics. We like the panic. Yeah. Like, oh my God, the world's ending, the sky's falling. And then we find out that, yes, that we should take it seriously, but there is a part that we can play in all of this. We can be the doomsayers, or we can try to be the optimists and say, how can we use this for good? AI for good. And there's many opportunities. We're seeing it in pharmaceuticals and developing specific drugs, and also finding cures for specific diseases, to hopefully helping us with climate change and how do we combat it, and food insecurities. So there's a lot out there, and I just was at a top 25 women of influence across Canada in the last few days celebration. And it was interesting to see these women that were being honored and what they were doing. A lot of them were in the social impact area. And it was, trying to help address, and many of them are already using AI. So I think it's left up to us individually how we want to do it. Do we want to be the complainer, the naysayer, or do we want to be an activist and an advocate?
Yeah, I love that. An activist and an advocate. Fantastic. Now, one of the things that we were talking about, Sherry, is the role of women in terms of the field of tech as a whole, but particularly in terms of the adoption of AI, because you've got some quite interesting statistics there, haven't you, that you wanted to share with our audience?
Yes, and I just heard these yesterday, and I haven't seen them in writing, but it was in a conversation, and this professor at the University of Toronto had been approached by a group asking about AI and women and how we can get more women-led ventures to adopt AI. And it was said that there were only 16% of all, of 15%, 16% of women-led ventures were using AI. And that means that, that's like, oh my gosh. And the men is much higher, like 50%. So we have a long ways to go here in this, but I think these podcasts and this conversation such as we're having, hopefully will be a catalyst for individuals to start doing a little more research on their own, or taking a course, an online course, or at their local college or university to try to learn a little bit more. But I think just taking stock of what you do, if you as I mentioned earlier, your workflow and your company, what efficiencies could you possibly address using some type of AI?
Yeah, and as you said, it's just what can you do? It could just be something quite small to begin with. I think that's the thing, isn't it? That I certainly feel that over the course of this conversation, that the whole topic of AI has become demystified for me in a way. And it's just, baby steps are also steps, aren't they?
Yes, and I think we also don't, some of us don't remember the steps we took when the internet was first introduced to us. I was around the academic world, so I knew the academic world had it first. And I remember the first time at an academic conference, and I'm hearing them spell out the World Wide Web, www. So we had to take backslash, HTTP, and we had to write it down because we didn't know what it was, right? And so we think about this is that we had to say, am I ever going to use that? I don't know. So now look at us, and we're using it, and we have realized that it's a great tool. We've also understand that, as I said, the guardrails that have had to be developed around the technology. So AI has come upon us quickly, but as I said, it's been around for years, and it's been being utilized by corporations, social media for years, and other corporations for years. And as we use Google search today, there'll be more fine tuning on that. So they'll be using more AI. You remember when you do a Google search and stuff comes out that you don't really care about? It's going to get better and better with these search engines with utilizing AI. So I think it's just like all innovation, but it is happening a little bit quicker than maybe the internet did in our lifetime. But it's an exciting opportunity for us to utilize it and see how it can benefit us and what we need to be aware of. And I want to bring this up because I think it's important as all corporations is to understand how your employees are reacting to your use of AI and your future possible use of AI. And I think that's part of encouraging them to be a continuous lifelong learner and giving them opportunities to learn. We present at our all hands in person meeting how we use AI once a year and twice a year. So we want everyone on our team to understand how we're utilizing AI and what it means to them.
Yeah, I love that. And as you said, if we have this knowledge or if we have ways in which we can improve our businesses, we also have to improve our people at the same time, don't we?
Yes. Otherwise, people become afraid of it and say, is it going to take my job? The question you can turn it around and say, how can we use AI to make me more efficient and effective and contribute to the bottom line of the corporation? But that comes from the top and being open and inclusive. But to me, that's one of the reasons I moved from California to Canada was the opportunities that I had to develop companies that were built on a culture of inclusion, diversity, and respect for all individuals. It was quite toxic in Silicon Valley and still is, hasn't changed much. And so I think that whatever you do with your companies, you should try to think, how is this going to affect my team members? And is this being inclusive or is it being exclusive? And is this diversity, respecting diversity or not? So, and I think just sitting down with your team and having a discussion with them, what do they know about AI? But again, starting with how you use it is a good start within a corporation, because that's immediate. People think, am I going to lose my job?
Yeah, oh, definitely. And of course, that is a fear of anybody that is employed, because they're giving their life really to a corporation. And it's, as entrepreneurs, obviously, we are always aware that we have those vulnerabilities. So we build things into our businesses to try and address that. But really, it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thought, isn't it? If you think AI is going to take my job, you don't want anybody thinking that, really, do you?
And I think it's a valid question though from them. And so I think as a leader, we should be able to answer that question for them. And it's, again, not one answer and done. It's because it's evolving. This year, this is how we're utilizing AI. This is what we're thinking about how we're going to utilize it longer term. And then how does that affect us? Does it make us hopefully it makes it more effective, but what does it mean? And you might need to offer some upskilling and opportunities for your team to learn more about AI.
Yeah, indeed. So I just want to go back to what you were saying about Silicon Valley, because actually my sister lived in Palo Alto for a long time. She was married to a tech guy. So I spent quite a lot of time in Palo Alto myself. Now, obviously, Palo Alto it's the home of tech, really, isn't it? Worldwide. Yes. So everybody knows that. So if you don't know where Silicon Valley is, it's Palo Alto is where the headquarters of all the big tech companies like Google and Facebook all are. They're all in this little place called Palo Alto, which, as I said, it's where my sister used to live. And it's just south of San Francisco. So what is it about that Silicon Valley culture, given that it's a culture that's dedicated to innovation and tech excellence, let's say, that is a culture that you fled from?
Okay, I want to say that I left. I was fine myself because I'm strong enough, female, to stand up and be an influence, hopefully positively, with the leadership. So when I said I left because of it, I tried to make changes, but it wasn't working. So what I think we need to do is get more women in tech.
Yeah.
And with that will come all the good qualities of women leaders into the workplace. And one's being more empathetic and one is being inclusive and respectful. And I think that's one of the big issues. We just need more women in tech willing to stand up and fight. And like I said, I'm going to start my own tech companies and build a culture, this culture that I believe is essential for a non-toxic work environment. And I want to be more than non-toxic. I want it to be a very productive environment. And so it's a great place to be. And you work really hard there. I think with entrepreneurs, you always work, 7 days a week and 12 to whatever hours plus a day. I found that too. I was head of Asia Pacific for this company. So I spent a lot of time in and out of Silicon Valley. But of course, I had to deal with the culture because the headquarters was there. So I think just getting more women, let's get more. And I also say more diversity and overall, just not women. The diversity of perspective and of thought will help the individuals to understand maybe they have some unconscious bias. And also there's acceptable behavior and there's not acceptable behavior. And I saw the bad and I saw some good there. Otherwise, I wouldn't have stayed with the company as long as I did. But when I left, I'm going to make a bigger change than I could in just this one organization. So more women, more diversity. I think we will then, and I don't know how long it'll take, but let's just keep trying.
Well, that's it really. And I think for somebody like you who's out there actually championing a diverse and inclusive environment in tech, it's so important that women will be listening to your voice. And well, people of color and I mean, anybody who is underrepresented really in that field, they need to hear it from people like you that, yes, you do have a place in this world. And it is not just a man's world. It's a world for everybody. And you just have to stand up and say, I want it.
Yes.
Amazing. Well, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you, Sherry. I really have enjoyed our conversation. And we just talked a little bit at the beginning about your platform that matches industry partners with funders. So could you just elaborate on that? And you can tell people where to go if that's something that they're interested in as well.
So I had mentioned that there's $300 billion of research funding worldwide available every year. So what our platform does is try to, if you're an industry partner, you're looking for some non-dilutive money funding to do some of your research internally, and then we may need to be partnered with an academic research. We can do that. So you give us your project. You can upload it in an intake form on our website, and then we go start looking for funding for you, and you sit back and wait for an email.
Wow.
Yes.
That is just amazing. Okay. So what a wonderful opportunity. Okay. Well, Sherry, thank you again. It has been a pleasure and really looking forward to hearing more about your progress going forward.
Well, thank you. And I look forward to hearing more about your work because it's quite impactful.
Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Bye.